Alright, so we've got our pencil and eraser. Now we're just gonna draw the face. Alright, so how do you draw the face? You can print out the reference photo when you just started, because I think it's easier because you can put some guideline on it. So I'll do it like that, just to put some guideline of it. And then in the middle, so you can see the eyes and the nose is roughly a triangle. Alright, and I think that's our preparation. So now we're just gonna draw it directly. So you can see roughly you have the shape of the face already, and you can tell if you're doing it right by just looking the reference photo. I think here is the triangle. The eyebrows is roughly on the top of the triangle, and then the nose roughly here. It takes some time to practice. The more practice, the more accurate you will be. If you're just a beginner, then it might be a bit hard for you. You can still give it a try. Hopefully, this line, this tip of the eyes is probably aligned with the side of the nose. All right. Okay, and then this nose, roughly like this. And over here, it has some shadows over here. Alright, so this eye is a bit messy, so we can clean it up. Don't have to erase it entirely, just a little bit. Leave some guideline as well, and make sure that both eyes are equally, pretty much equally the same size as well. So when you're doing it, like sketching like this, no matter what you're doing, always stop at some point and then just look from further away to, in that case, it's easier to spot your problem. Like, maybe this eye is so much higher than the other one, or this is not, the face is not balanced. It's always better to look from far behind, because when you're drawing, it's really easy that you became this tunnel vision, that you only focus on this small area, that you forgot about the whole picture. So once we like pretty much decided where is the correct position, we can twist it a bit more. We can start to add more details. Not too much detail, right? Because we're not going to draw a super realistic pencil or charcoal sketch today. We're just gonna add watercolor later on, so you don't have to color the entire things right now. Right. So it's always good to have, you know, multiple guideline. Okay, so now we are going to mix some skin tone color. If you don't have this peach kind of skin color, then you can mix it with a little bit of yellow, orange, and I normally start with a bigger brush. So this one, I think it's a Chinese calligraphy brush. And firstly, I'll wet the paper and carefully avoid the area that I want to highlight. So in this case, the highlighting area is the tip of the nose and the left eyelid. So I avoid those two places and just leave it dry because I wanted to have a sharp highlight over it. So when I mix skin tone, normally I will mix it with some purple because purple has this really nice transparent kind of feelings when you apply it in the skin tone. But it has to be very light. So now I'm just applying some color with a lot of water. So avoid using too much color at first. So with watercolor, it is easier to just overlap it rather than, you know, try to cover it with lighter tone. So because on the right hand side, her face is darker. So now I'm using some darker color And because I wet it first, so I could take my time without letting my paper dry too fast. It depends on the paper that you're using. So I'm using this 100% cotton paper and 300 GSM, and I found that this type of paper is quite absorbent, so it absorbs a lot of water when you apply for it, so it's harder to dry as well. So on the left side, because it's lighter, I mixed with some lemon yellow, because I think in the reference photo there are some yellow on her face, some lighting, probably through some sunset sunlight. So on the very right hand side there are some very dark area on the edge of the face. I only apply a little bit of purple mixed with brown at the moment. So my paper is still quite wet, so I can keep twisting the color. If your paper is still already dry, then don't try to mix it with more water or color. Otherwise, you'll leave some cauliflower mark after it dries. So right now, I'm just gonna speed up, let you see the time lapse. Alright, so now I'm coloring her lips. So I use some red and orange, because I think her lips is more orange than pink. So I apply first at the bottom of the top lips first, with a little bit thicker color. Let me zoom in for you. So I think her mouth area, it's kind of wet at the moment. So you can see that the color, it's a little bit bleed out. But it is okay. Now I'm just fixing it with a dry brush. So when you try to fix the watercolor, you use a paper towel to dry your brush first, and then you just lift up the color from your paper. It's a pretty easy way to lift color. Also, you can also use your paper towel to absorb the excessive water from the paper. That's okay too. So now we move on to the eye. So around her eyes, there are some pinkish, orangish kind of color around the eyes. Okay, so now I'm coloring the neck. Let me zoom out a bit. So I pull out this spray bottle. I just spray some area to keep this painting alive. Moisture my paper, also giving some misty kind of effect. I only just recently discovered this technique. Just by using spray bottle, it can give your painting a bit more interesting effect, and also the brush stroke is not as stiff as you just paint it with your brush. Alright, sorry about my head there. Okay, so with the neck, I just use big bold brush to roughly just color it, give it a little bit of the outline of the bone structure. Yeah, nothing fancy. Okay, I need to lift her teeth area because the red from her lip just kind of bleed out too much on her teeth. Looks like she has gum infection, so she was bleeding. So I need to lift some color. Alright, now I think we're doing the eyes now. Okay, so I'm doing the eye now. So the color that I use is just some brown with the purple. I think that gives it a nice natural kind of darker skin tone. It's perfect to do like eyelid because you don't want the eyelid to be too dark. And also, if you want it to be darker, like I'm doing her eyelashes now, I mix with the burn sienna, I think, with some blue. Indigo blue is a good kind of blue. It's sort of like the blue that close to black, but it's not entirely black. So I think if you are painting watercolor for a while now, you might heard of some people says that don't use black. I'm not against of this using black idea, but I don't really use black myself, not very often, unless I'm doing like entirely black hair. kind of character, like an Asian, then I will use the pure black, because you know there's no other color. But with this photo reference, because I think it's the lighting as well, so the lighting is a bit warmer, so even the darkest area, her eyelashes, it's not entirely the pure black. I think the eyes area is my favorite part to draw. Also the eye bag. Try not to be too afraid to add colors on the eye bag, because that's the part that gives your human face more realistic. I know before it completed, a drawing eye bag seems like this person has been punched in the eye, but don't worry about it as long as it dry. With watercolor, when it dry, the color will just fade away a bit, so you don't have to worry about it too much. Alright, so now we're doing some shadow of her nose. You see that highlight on her tip of the nose? I try to avoid touching that highlight because I keep that highlight on purpose. So I want it to be really bright. So I'm just carefully not to touch it while I'm adding color around it. Okay, now when I'm just gonna zoom out, and you can see that the reference photo, the right side of her face is still much darker, and also her right eye is much darker. Around her right eyes is much darker as well. So I'm just gonna add more color at this point, because the first layer has already dried completely, so I get to add more color on top of it, just to layer it up. The second layer, after you lay it up, you can see this really vibrant difference. So at this point, if I want it to be like blurry on the edge of the brush stroke, I'm just gonna use a spray bottle. I think it's more efficient than just, you know, wet the entire paper again. And just use some small spray bottle. Any type is fine. I think I got this one from Chemist Warehouse. I think it was supposed to be using like a cosmetic purpose, but I'm just find this really good for me to use when I do my watercolor. Right. Don't try to worry about that dark area too much, because this is gonna fade later. There are a lot of water on it. So I think her cheek, I want it to be a bit more red, and because she has some freckle on her face, so right now I'm just doing the freckles while the paper is still a bit wet, so the freckle will like blurry a bit, so it doesn't seem too obvious. Seems more natural. Okay, so her mouth area, it's completely dry, so now we're gonna add a second layer on it. So on the second layer, I need to be more precise because this is gonna be I think my last layer. So if you get it wrong, then it's harder to fix. So at this point, I'll be more careful. So I'll be drawing a bit slower and just observing the reference photo a bit more carefully as well. Like when we are doing the sketch on this kind of paper, because it's really a rough surface, it's really hard to do like a fine line, and it's not very necessary to do like a very fine sketch. So right now, when we are color it, surprisingly, we can get more detail than the pencil with the brush. So again, if you're trying to lift some color, just remember to just dry your brush and then lift your color, or you can just erase it from your finger. Or you can dab some water on your brush to clean your brush first and then just wash it off. So when we do the eyes, make sure that you leave some highlight area in the eyes as well. I'm using fairly small paintbrushes. I think it's a number 4. I got this brush. It's actually a pretty cheap brush. I got it from Office Work, and it was like a set of paintbrushes. It's like 5 of them, but it's only less than $20. So each brush is almost only $4, and I found them perform really well. It's probably because they're still new, and I don't know how long they will last. I think this is probably my 3rd time to use this brush, but so far it's really good. The tip remains pointy after a while. some of my more expensive brush, like the Winsor Newton sable hairbrush, it costs me like $20 or $30 per brush, like really small one, but it just doesn't last. The tip of the brush, it's not as pointy as this one, so it's quite disappointing. But maybe because it's because of me, I didn't use it well. So if you're just a beginner, again, you don't want to spend too much money, then you can just go to Office Work to get a set of brush. Get the round one. They do have like flat one as well, or the mixed one, like with flat and round one. Alright, so right now we finished the left eye, and so after you color the eye, it looks so much more alive rather than, you know, a zombie looking kind of face. So when I do the second eye, like the right eye, I'm trying to be more loose, like trying to be not so precise, because I want this picture to look more interesting rather than just, you know, very realistic. So it is always important to balance the loose area and the tight, neat area. It's always better if you can mix a bit of the tight and the loose. Some part can be really detailed and very realistic, but some part you can just let it go. Let the watercolor do its own thing. It gets more expressive as well. Okay, so I'm just adding this left side. Okay, so the last part of the mouth is the dark shade inside it. So just roughly leave the teeth area white and add the dark shade, and you can immediately see how different it makes. The entire mouth looks so much more better. And also with the shade, there is some shade coming up from the lip as well. So just add more water to this dark color. And now I'm just adding another layer on her lip. So now you can add a little bit more detail for the lips. If your reference photo is high resolution, which I recommend you to do this, you can see a lot more detail when you're doing it. So realistic, I don't normally do like really realistic kind of style, so I'm not going to draw every single wrinkle that I see from the reference photo, but it is nice to have some of them. So we're now doing the final touch of this face, which is her eyebrow. So when I'm doing the left eyebrow, because it's lighter, you can see more detail. And so I pretty much do every single eyebrow, like one by one. But on the right hand side, because it was more darker, so it gets blurry and it's hard to tell each single one of the eyebrows. So I do it a bit. Okay, so now we pretty much finished the face. I hope you enjoyed this video and I hope you learned something. This is the first time I record such a long video and also doing portrait from the scratch. So hopefully you can learn something from this video. So now I'm just gonna speed it up. If you want to play it slower, I think you can. So like I was doing some splashes just then to add some more freckles. Yeah. And I use some paper towel to dab the darker one